This is Bill again, coming to you to start with your first lesson or our first lesson. And I want to start really with the basics, the stuff that we hear regularly, the common teachings on grief. Most of us have heard Kubler-Ross's 5 stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, sadness, and acceptance. And a lot of times we can add a sixth one. That sixth one would be meaning. And as I said in the introduction, it's kind of good to know these things, to recognize that they're there, to be aware. But sometimes we get stuck in that space where we judge ourselves by what stage am I at? And we kind of feel like once we move through that stage, we're done. In our practice, mindfully, we recognize that that's not the truth. But anyway, when we focus on those things, it almost looks like our goal is to get to that place of acceptance. And to help get to that space of acceptance, maybe we can say things to ourselves like, I accept there are things that are not within my control, or I feel at peace with whatever happens. And I'm not dismissing the acceptance space, because it is important. Because once we start leaning into acceptance, we can feel a shift. But does that shift last? What happens when we start to encounter anger or sadness? It hits us by surprise because we thought we went through it already. We feel frustrated or disappointed, or if it lasts too long, we get this sense of despair again. For some reason, we feel like once we deal with something, it should be over. But the truth is, it's not one and done. Why are these things coming back? Because that's how it works. There's no checklist that says once we check it off, we're done. We can't say next, like we're climbing the stairs. When it comes to grief and the stages of them, the way they're presented, it almost seems like a checklist that we need to move through, but that's a myth. That's one of the big myths that we need to discover as we go through this process of grieving. And there are some others that I'm going to talk about as we move forward. But let's just start right there. Going through the stages of grief doesn't mean that we're going through or taking a test. This is a journey. And there are other stages that we'll go through. We could move into a stage where maybe we focus on how grateful we are for the time that we had. We can move into that space where we feel compassion for ourselves. We can move into a space where we need to sit with some forgiveness, kindness, or love. So we don't want to box ourselves in. And the last thing we want to do is think that we need to go through all these checks, through all these stages. I don't like that word stage. When we're being with something, we learn to be with it. We move through it. So as we go through this course, we're going to discover all the different ways we're with grief.